Hey everyone, this is a somewhat catastrophic failure of the disc brake caliper on my boat trailer. This happens to be from the left side of the trailer, the driver's side. I have a dual axle trailer with surge brakes on all four wheels or both axles. So this is a pretty catastrophic failure, and I believe the reason for the failure is that one of the two mounting bolts was missing. So it either loosened, fell off. There's no evidence that it was there at the time of this failure. In this case, on the left side, that happens to be the upper mounting bolt was missing. And I'm going to show you what the mounting hole for the lower mounting bolt looks like. It was taking all the stresses of braking. I've only had this boat trailer for about 3 years. I've only towed my boat 10 or 15 miles, maybe less than 24 times. So I'll show you the axle in just a minute. So here's the left end of the axle, and you can see that the lower right hand mounting hole is very elongated versus the other three holes, which are perfectly round. And so the disc brake is mounted on the two right hand holes, which are the rear holes. And if the top bolt was missing, you can see how the brake caliper would swing down in this direction, and as it grabbed the disc, all the forces would be on that bolt, causing that all the stresses to be on that hole, causing that hole to elongate. So my original plan was just simply to rotate this like this and get two good holes on the rear side. But unfortunately, you can see this hole right here. This hole's on the bottom side of the axle, and you can see how large it is. And on the top side of the axle, there's a smaller hole in a different location. This larger hole was clearance for a nut and bolt that came up through the leaf spring. So I can't just flip this upside down and use it. So what I'm going to do is flip it end to end, thereby putting the right side on the left and the left side on the right, and I'll have a good set of mounting holes for the brake caliper, and I'll be good to go. So I just have to replace one caliper. I'm going to be able to salvage this axle. When this moves to the other side, I'll only be using these two holes to mount the brake caliper. Here's a picture of that nut and bolt I was telling you about that comes up through the leaf spring, and then it goes into the axle. So it needs a clearance hole to go into the axle, and rather than drill a hole and make it weaker or anything like that, I'm just going to flip it end to end. I'm really shocked at the condition of this trailer. I bought the boat, it was a distressed boat sale in 2008 from a dealer, and I'm not convinced this is the right trailer that was supposed to go with it, because it was essentially a brand new trailer, and there were different signs of rust around the leaf spring. So I don't know whether they had this submerged somewhere or sitting in a puddle, but the rest of the trailer looks great. But once you get the wheels off, I start looking at these leaf springs. And the other thing I'm a little alarmed by is that the axle doesn't sit in the top, the 6 o'clock position. It's sort of at the 6:30 position. And the rear axle is actually sort of similar situation, but it's sitting at around the 5:30 position, not the 6 o'clock position. Yeah, you know, it is what it is. This boat's going to be on my boat lift in the water eventually in South Carolina. But while I'm up in Connecticut, we're stuck with having to tow. I wanted to just show you what that clearance hole was for, okay? My suspicion is the caliper mounting bolts were not properly torqued. This is the factory caliper bolt. It's a hex cap screw. It takes a 1/2 inch Allen wrench. I was not able to get any of my 3/8 drive socket bits to fit in there, fit around with the clearance of the leaf spring and the trailer frame. So if the factory's putting it in with a standard hex key, I can see why they're not tight, because it is a pain in the ass to torque them down. My new caliper came with these bolts. This bolt, the bolt looks like this, and you can see there's a red Loctite on it and no lock washer, whereas the other one, original one, had a lock washer. The new one does not have a lock washer, but it does have red Loctite on the threads. I believe, if I recall correctly, I think the torque spec is 50 or 55 foot-pounds It'd be a lot easier to tighten this with an open or closed box wrench. I think, I haven't tried this yet, but I think one of my sockets might get there with an articulated joint on it, but clearly an open or closed box wrench will be able to get on this, and you'll be able to put a lot of torque on it as opposed to tightening with an Allen wrench. This is the right side of the trailer now, looking at the from the back of the boat. So what was the left end has now been switched to the right, and the right has been switched to the left. And as you can see, the elongated bad holes are at the front, and I have two good mounting holes at the back to mount my caliper. And same situation on the other side. So that's how you salvage an axle after you've had a disc brake caliper failure like the one I had.